Good day, sunshine. Good day, sunshine. Good day, sunshine. I need to laugh, and when the sun is out, I've got something I can laugh about. I feel good in a special way. I'm in love and it's a sunny day. Good day, sunshine. Good day, sunshine. Good day, sunshine. We take a walk, the sun is shining down, burns my feet as they touch the ground. Good day, sunshine. Good day, sunshine. Good day, sunshine. Good day, sunshine. Good day, sunshine.
Hey y'all, how's it going? Well, these plants, most of them have been in their buckets now for 2 weeks, and it is time for me to add the ring of fertilizer to those that are heavy feeders. So I'm going to go through the garden and talk about each thing and what kind of fertilizer I'm using for it. So first up are peppers. This one is a green bell pepper, and this one is a hot banana pepper. Now, the directions for RGGS are that you are supposed to add a ring of fertilizer around the outside edge of your bucket. The reason you're doing it on the outside edge is in the event that you are using a synthetic fertilizer, that can really burn the roots. So you have to keep it away from the plant and away from the roots. If you are using an organic fertilizer, those are time release and it will not hurt your plant. It's not going to burn your plant if you're using organic pelletized fertilizer. But I'm going to pretend, even though I'm using organic, I'm going to demonstrate adding just the ring like it was synthetic. So what would you do? Especially right here in this one where I have a basil companion plant. Well, what I would do is first I would create me a little trough around the outside edge here. Kind of staying away from the basil. Okay, then I would add my ring of fertilizer in the trough. Now, if you're using a synthetic, like a 10-10-10, they suggest that you use a whole cup. If you're using an organic, this happens to be Dr. Earth's tomato and vegetable. I have been able to get before Dr. Earth's 555, but this one I couldn't find it. This is tomato, vegetable, and herb 463. So, because of that, you use twice as much. But I'm going to have a caveat here about peppers. Some people say that peppers are heavy feeders. There's just all kinds of information out there about whether they are or they aren't. What I have found is that the larger peppers, like these hot bananas, are heavy feeders, but the smaller peppers that you get are more like medium feeders. So on the big peppers, I am going to go ahead and add 2 full cups. But on my small peppers, I'm just going to add 1.5 cups. Okay, now once you have that ring of fertilizer in, you can take your hands if you want to and just kind of gently push it in there, but it's not really necessary, because what you want to do next is get you some fresh potting mix, dry, and just cover up your fertilizer. Now, mulch. You can make a decision whether you want to mulch peppers or not. I usually do, more for a reason of keeping the soil moist than anything else. Although you could, either way, you can mulch peppers or not mulch peppers. I'm going to add just a little bit of my easy straw. Just like that. Next to it are bush beans. Bush beans are not heavy feeders. They do not need the ring of fertilizer at all. If you've used a quality compost in your mix, there should be enough nutrients there for your beans to do well all summer. However, I will say this, I do feed my plants other than just the fertilizer. I usually use compost tea, but sometimes when I don't have time to make compost tea, then I mix up a batch of fish and seaweed emulsion, which is what I have here in my jug. And it is Neptune's fish and seaweed. So with the beans, I'm just going to give it a little bit of a drink. That's all that's on this row, so I'll finish up this row and then we'll talk about a few other things in the garden here. One other thing I forgot to mention. Normally, if you live in an area that gets rain pretty frequently, there is no need to water in this ring of fertilizer. You just let the rain do it over time. And remember, your potting mix is a little bit damp anyway, so it's going to slowly dissolve down in there even without a rain. But if you live in a very arid climate, you probably do need to go ahead and gently water in your fertilizer. This row right here, I've got exactly the same setup: peppers and bush beans, and then this is catmint. So I've already done the fertilizer, the ring of fertilizer on the peppers. So all I'm doing now is just giving my beans a drink of the fish and seaweed emulsion. Okay, now let's go on to another row. On either end of this row, I actually have cucumbers planted. I think that's right. Yes, cucumbers. I have not planted the other buckets yet because I'm waiting for it to get a little bit hotter before I do that, because I will be direct sowing purple hull peas, black-eyed peas in these buckets. Cucumbers are a heavy feeder, so they need the ring of fertilizer too. And again, I will put on some mulch. I I'm not digging the little trench and all that because, again, I'm using organic fertilizer. It's not necessary because it's not going to burn the plant. This row right here has my winter squash seedlings that I started, and then there are still 4 buckets that don't have anything in them yet. Again, they will be the black-eyed peas or the purple hull peas, pink-eye purple hull, that sort of thing. They've only been in the ground for, or in these buckets for a week now. At transplanting time, I added 1/4 teaspoon, because they were very small transplants, of the mycorrhizae powder in the bottom of the hole. So it's really not time to add the ring of fertilizer yet. They need another good week of getting established. But what I am going to give it is a drink of mycorrhizae root drench. I've mixed 1 tablespoon in 1 gallon of water. This little baby row here has 2 jalapeno peppers on either side, and in the center I have planted calendula, I think, around the outside, and also some zinnia seeds in the middle. And I see a few tiny ones starting to come up. But because these were planted with seed, again, no fertilizer. In fact, these kind of plants really don't need that much fertilizer. So right now, I am just going to give it a little bit of this mycorrhizae root drench. Throughout the summer, I will feed these, but only with my compost tea or fish and seaweed emulsion. They won't get any stronger fertilizers than that. On this row, again, I've just planted some calendula around the outer edge, and I'm waiting to plant my okra seeds until it gets a lot warmer. Okra especially does not like cold weather. And there's no point in starting them too soon, when as soon as it gets hot enough, they will take off. I need to mix up another batch and show you what other plants in here I'm giving the mycorrhizae root drench. Moving on to companion plants that I have placed in various corners and such around the garden beds. In this container, I planted poached eggplant seeds. They are sprouting now. So just like anything else that I've planted seed from, it's time to give it a root drench of the mycorrhizae, because we want to get those roots well established and get them going. Over here is bee balm. Bee balm really doesn't need to have any kind of fertilizer. It will do fine as long as you've planted it in some soil. You could add some good compost to it. If like this is a 2nd year plant, it survived, so I could just top it off with a little bit of good compost or some new potting mix I mixed up. But instead of that, I will just give it a drink of either compost tea or the fish and seaweed emulsion every couple of weeks or so. This here is lavender. Best to leave lavender alone. It doesn't even like good quality soil, and it definitely doesn't like fertilizer. And if you do fertilize it, you'll end up probably killing it. And I'm starting to see some purple buds. So pretty soon my lavender is going to be in full bloom. This is Mexican marigold that overwintered, but I also threw in some more Mexican marigold seeds the other day, and there are a few here and there starting to come up. So I'm just very gently going to give some mycorrhizae root drench. In this trio here, we have thyme, sage, oregano, and one basil plant. I may end up having to move that. Basil and sage don't play well together, but they are pretty far apart. Herbs generally, and this is rosemary, herbs generally do not need any extra fertilizer. If you start fussing with them, they usually end up worse for the wear. So they don't need anything. I could give them again compost tea or fish and seaweed emulsion every now and then. Here's lavender. Again, we already talked about that. I did throw a few little sweet alyssum seeds in the front of this the other day, and they're starting to bloom. So the mycorrhizae will be good to give that to them in a root drench. It's not going to hurt the lavender either. It's just going to help establish a stronger root system. This little bag has some sweet alyssum in it that actually overwintered, popped back up, and I threw, I think it was either Cosmos, I think it was Cosmos or Zinnias in here behind it. So again, I'm just giving it a mycorrhizae root drench. In this corner, most everything was overwintered. This is yarrow, chives, which are now coming into bloom. I will let them bloom. I won't harvest these. They don't taste very good anyway when they start blooming, but they will draw pollinators, so I'm just going to leave them. In the back there is some echinacea, and I threw in, again, I think some Cosmos, Zinnias, and sweet alyssum. So it gets the mycorrhizae root drench. Again, none of this will need fertilizer, but I will give it compost tea and or the fish and seaweed emulsion whenever I have a batch brewed or mixed up. Everything planted in these border boxes were, let's see, wildflower seeds. I think I threw in some sweet alyssum and maybe some calendula. They don't need a lot of fertilizing. So again, because they're just starting baby seedlings, I'm giving it a drink of mycorrhizae root drench. All right, well now I'm in bed 3 where I have tomatoes and peppers planted, and they all got the fertilizer under the straw. Although I did run out of Dr. Earth's, so about halfway through I started using my Sustain, which is an organic 464, to finish up. This row, cherry tomatoes, cucumbers, pole beans, cucumbers, pole beans, cucumbers, pole beans, cucumbers, and more cherry tomatoes. The tomatoes and the cucumbers got the Sustain, the fertilizer, and the beans got the fish emulsion. Now this row here, I had bought 2 squash plants at the nursery, but the rest of them were started from seed. So the 2 squash plants have been planted a while. They got the fertilizer already. They are squash or heavy feeders. And then the rest of the little seedlings just got the root drench with the mycorrhizae. This row back here are all Hell's Best cantaloupes, and I haven't planted the black-eyed peas yet. They all got the ring of fertilizer, and it was the Sustain 464, what I had left. This row here of my tiny little beans here, they're still pretty small, but they've already gotten their root drench of mycorrhizae a few days back, so today they got the fish and seaweed emulsion. Again, beans don't need the ring of fertilizer. The eggplant does need the ring of fertilizer, which it got, and the potatoes, I am watering them with fish and seaweed emulsion. They're looking pretty good. Same thing with the potatoes back here. They got fish and seaweed emulsion. The bag in front is bee balm, and I believe that is echinacea. Now, with these 2 garden beds here, because they have covers over the gutters, roofs, I will have to water in the ring of fertilizer on these plants. So that's it for the vegetable garden this week. Now I'll move on to showing you our perennials and how I am fertilizing them and planting out some new annuals and what I do when at planting time and then beyond.
Good day, sunshine.